Good morning, fellow Martians. Welcome back to another episode of Mixed Martial Arts. My name is Austin Shaper. This is a show where we explore the topics of UAP, UFC, and World War III. Today being a very important UFC episode. I'm going to do my best to keep this quick because it's early in the morning and I work like a 10-hour day today. Got a lot to do. Let's dive into what the heck happened last night with Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. I was literally in disbelief. I was in awe. I was watching with my buddies on Discord, and none of us could even believe or compute mentally what happened. Rewinding the build up to this fight, a lot of analysts, a lot of opinions about where this fight was going to go, and while most of us did count Sean Strickland out, there's always, you'd have to be a fool to not admit that he at least had a puncher's chance, because any fight, there's a puncher's chance, and it doesn't matter if it's a dominant champion, it doesn't matter if the guy is on a crazy win streak, it doesn't matter. Anybody's got a puncher's chance because something can land flush. It takes 1 millisecond, one mistake, you zig left instead of zig right, and that could be the end of that. That's not what happened, though. What impresses me so much, if you guys missed the fight, I guess real briefly, I'll catch you up. Sean Strickland is now the middleweight champion of the world, 185 pounds. He soundly defeats Israel Adesanya by decision. I think Adesanya only won. I didn't look at the judging scorecard, but just from my take, it seemed like the only round that Adesanya potentially took, I think, was round 2, if I'm not mistaken. And maybe it was round 3. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was round 2, but I only saw, from my perspective, Adesanya winning 1 round, really. Other than that, Sean Strickland was dominant, man. He was extremely dominant. He pretty much beat Adesanya pillar to post, knocked him down brutally in the first round, and it was kind of surprising that Adesanya even got back up and recovered. A lot of props to him for being able to recover from that because it was a nasty shot. It kind of had that, it kind of looked like one of those sequences that the fight was going to be stopped, and somehow Adesanya popped back up, finished the round on his feet, and then, they reset on the feet for the second round. What's so impressive about what Sean Strickland did, there's a lot of things, but to simplify it, it's bizarre. It's just... And that's why we love this sport so much. If we always knew what the outcome was going to be, we wouldn't be that intrigued to watch it, right? And I kind of thought, I was talking to my buddy, leading up to this fight, and other than there being a puncher's chance, the only other path to victory that people kind of suggested for Sean Strickland was to out-grapple Adesanya, put him against the cage, put him on his back, and that was going to be no easy task. Look in the career of Adesanya, how many people put him on his back, So it's not an easy task, but it was potentially a path to victory for Adesanya, and it didn't even go to the ground at all other than that brief few moments where Adesanya was knocked down and then tried to get back to his feet, got to the cage. But what's so freaking impressive about this entire fight was that Sean Strickland, one, he just put the pressure on Adesanya constantly, which is not new to Adesanya. Adesanya is a counter striker. We always know that he's kind of got to wait for the strikes to come in. He uses the momentum and the forward motion of his opponent, and he counter strikes him, right? And he's constantly on his bike. He's moving around. He's got great footwork, and he's got great variety in his striking. He starts down low with the low kicks, brings it up high with the question mark kicks, and he's got this good game plan. And it's interesting because in one performance, it can literally change your opinion of a fighter. And while I love Adesanya, I think he's amazing. I think he's one of the best middleweights and one of the best fighters of all time. But for me, his stock dramatically went down, and this wasn't just one off night. Dana White was talking at the post-fight press conference about, this could have been an off night for Adesanya, and, he said he'd have to ask him. Obviously, Israel would have to tell us what was going on. Was it mental? Was it physical? Did he have an injury? What was going on? Why did he look so slow? Why did he look so off? Even in the 5th round, when Adesanya knew he was losing, and, his only path to victory was to knock out or submit Sean Strickland, he didn't even attempt it. He just ran away, stayed on his bike, and barely engaged. And when he did try to engage, Sean ended up being the one who would land the last shot and the one that would affect Adesanya. He barely landed on Strickland. There was a few times throughout the fight where he did have some good, crisp shots land on him, but nothing that stunned Strickland, nothing that rocked him, nothing that dropped him. I mean, I don't even know what to make of this fight. I would really like to have an expert on the podcast in the next week or so to kind of discuss analytically what happened, because this was a masterclass by Sean Strickland. And like I said, I think it changed the stock of Adesanya, because this wasn't just an off night, in my opinion. This was like he got exposed. And it's so bizarre to see it, because once it happens, it's like it's kind of hard to rewind how you thought about Adesanya prior to this, because looking at his game last night, it seemed predictable. It seemed so limited in its nature. It's like he didn't have the ability. When plan A wasn't working, the counter-striking wasn't working, the leg kicks weren't even working. Sean was checking so many of them, and Sean was just putting the pressure on him, and Adesanya normally deals with pressure well, because that's the path to victory against Adesanya, right? You have to pressure him, because if you stay at range, he's lengthy, he's quick, and again, he's constantly looking for that counter shot. And so it's not something he wasn't expecting. You know what I mean? Obviously, Sean Strickland was going to pressure him. But what was weird, one, I thought that Sean Strickland's his kind of unorthodox defense, I mean, he does keep a high guard when he does keep it up. But what's weird about it is he's constantly reaching for the incoming punches. He's reaching, and then oftentimes you see they go over his head or around, and he gets hit. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be a masterclass. I mean, this is the perfect opponent for Israel Adesanya, right? Because Adesanya is going to get right through that guard. He's going to get right through, and using those feints, Sean Strickland's going to bite on those feints. He's going to reach, and then it's going to come over the top, or he'll get him with a head kick. Something like that is what I foresaw. And that's not what happened at all. Sean Strickland's like awkward defense plus the combination of the pressure, it's like nothing that Adesanya was throwing could land flush, like almost nothing. It would just glance off Sean Strickland's shoulders, off his forearms, and Sean just kept pressing forward. And it was just so impressive, man. I still don't even know what to make of it. I got to say, it's probably one of the absolute biggest upsets in the history of the sport. I think you have to say that with 100% certainty. And I'm not even the biggest Sean Strickland fan. I think he's got a unique style. I think he's got obviously a very unique character for the sport. So I appreciate him. I think he's great. I just don't like hearing all this stuff about like how much he loves wanting to murder people, and just like kind of seems like a bad guy. And just that's just my take. And I don't think it's kind of like for show. Like there's a lot of people in the UFC who are just kind of showmen, and then if you get them off camera, like Henry Cejudo, for example, it turns out people say he's like a really nice guy. Same with Colby. Sean Strickland kind of seems like a psychopath, does he not? If you ever listen to him on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast from a few months back, I mean, that dude needs like some clinical help. I mean, he's out to lunch. And so, well, I do appreciate his skill set. I'm not like the biggest Sean Strickland fan, but you just have to give... You just gotta sit there in awe at what he accomplished. And I don't know if it's a combination of Adesanya being off and Sean Strickland's awkward style and the lack of pressure that Sean said he was under, because he was coming in on kind of a short notice title fight. Doesn't really give you the build up to go through this full training camp, to have the anxieties, the potential physical injuries. It's kind of just like, boom, he was in a title fight before you know it. I don't remember how long they announced the fight before it happened, but it couldn't have been more like a month and a half or 2 months, right? So definitely didn't get a full training camp. And I think that actually kind of had the Michael Bisping effect when Michael Bisping fought for the belt against Luke Rockhold on 2 weeks' notice. He said he didn't have time for the anxieties and the normal stresses about camp, because boom, before you know it, you're in a fight and there's no pressure on you, because if you lose, everybody understands. You didn't even get a full camp. Everyone's kind of counting you out already, and if you just put on a good performance, a good show of yourself, you kind of morally had a victory there. That's not what happened. Sean put on the best performance of his life from any fight I've ever seen Sean Strickland, and this was the best performance he's ever put on. And I don't think this was just an off night for Adesanya. I think Adesanya got exposed, because I guess I kind of was going off on a tangent, but the reason why I think he got exposed here is because what did he have for Sean Strickland when plan A didn't work? And plan A was the same as it always is. Stay at range, kick the leg, go up top with the question mark kicks, use the feints, try to open up the striking, learn the pattern of the opponent. It's kind of the same recipe, and it works for him time and time again, especially with the pressure fighters. Costa and Gastelum, everyone who's tried to pressure him, they pay the price when they're coming in. Sean Strickland, just like everything glanced off of him, like he was made of like bulletproof body armor. Everything just bounced right off, and he just trotted forward. He was fazed by nothing. He did bite on some feints, but I didn't think more than he should have. He didn't really fall for the game of Adesanya. He just kind of like didn't believe in it, I feel like. He just kind of like didn't accept Adesanya's strategy. It's like he didn't even feel like he was resisting, and he was just like, he didn't deal with it. He just went right through it, got right through the feints, and Adesanya never had a moment to just stand put, and when he did, it got dicey for him. Normally, Adesanya is the one who lands the last counter shot, and that's kind of how he knocks out a lot of opponents. Robert Whittaker, so many opponents he's fought, it's kind of when they get into the scrap, into the pocket, and they're going back and forth, Adesanya ends up landing that last one, and that's always the one that kind of knocks down the opponent. Sean Strickland was the one doing that to Adesanya tonight, which was just jaw-dropping and crazy. And as I said, I think Adesanya just got exposed. I think that he's rather one-dimensional, and I don't say that to be insulting. He's one of my favorite fighters. But you don't have the ability to change game plans. And like I said, come the fifth round, you're losing dramatically. A title fight, you have so much on the line, and you don't change your strategy at all. You just keep backing up, keep going against the cage. Going against the cage worked against Piera. It wasn't working with Sean Strickland. Every time I saw him go against the cage, it was like a red alert, danger, danger. And it was the same thing with Piera, but, it seemed like Izzy was more ready for the counter-striking, and it seemed like a little more tactical, like he was playing possum in that last title fight. With this one, it's like he was just trying to get the hell away from Sean. He couldn't get Sean off of him. And again, he had nothing for him, man. He couldn't press forward. It's just kind of weird because Adesanya, with the high-level kickboxer that he is, you would think he'd be able to start putting the pressure on. And sometimes he puts the pressure on and still to wait for a counter shot, but I find it to be like a huge hole in his game that he can't just come out the gate striking first, especially when he's losing a decision. He's so used to outpointing his opponents that it's like he kind of goes into autopilot, and especially with the counter striking and the feints, and it works for him 99.9% of the time. But in this unique circumstance, it wasn't working, and he had nothing else on the table. He didn't pressure Sean. The few times that he did, he still just waited for a counter shot. He didn't know how to press forward, and I find that to be a giant hole in his game. And the question mark kicks, which normally fool every opponent, I found them to be slow and repetitive. It's like he didn't throw any teep kicks, at least not many. Didn't throw many just blasting the head kick. He always had to have the same style, and it usually works for him. But we're going to have to wait to see what Adesanya says about this. Was he injured? What was going on? My opinion off the bat is just that he got exposed tonight. And I was very surprised to see that Dana White had mentioned at the post-fight presser that he thinks that Adesanya is going to get an immediate rematch. And, because he's a dominant champ, and he said this was an off night, and I understand the rationale. He's one of the most dominant champions we've ever seen in the sport, so I can understand the rationale, but this fight was not competitive. It wasn't as if he got dog-walked the entire time. He had his moments, but this was not a very competitive fight. Sean never even got a cut on him, no bruising, no nothing, no knockdown, no getting stunned even. Nothing. And as I said, I thought that this, of all the fights that Adesanya potentially could have lost, I felt like this was the absolute best stylistic matchup Adesanya could have asked for. It's the best one. Sean Strickland's awkward style, the chin up, the kind of just plodding forward with the flat feet, kind of just primarily a boxer. He was throwing the teep kicks tonight and some leg kicks, but like primarily he's kind of a boxer. And I just thought stylistically this was kind of in the bag, and as long as Adesanya didn't get himself into staying in the pocket overly, too long, I thought this was kind of in the bag for Adesanya, and it just shows you, again, the argument we always go to, and the reason why we watch is that anybody's got a puncher's chance, right? But this wasn't that. That's what's so interesting. It wasn't as if he just landed a shot on him. When Michael Bisping got the belt off Luke Rockhold, it was kind of that puncher's chance. He landed that one flush shot, that counter, I believe, and it was a left hook, and ended up capitalizing on the moment. This wasn't one moment from Sean Strickland. This was a dominant performance from start to finish. except for maybe the second round. Adesanya edged it, I believe, but I mean, at the end of the day, it just was not that competitive. And to say that he deserves an immediate rematch, I disagree, man. I think Israel Adesanya got exposed. I think he needs to go back to the drawing board and level his game up. I don't feel like Sean Strickland is one of those guys who sits there and watches a bunch of tape of his opponent. Doesn't seem like the type, if you catch my drift. He kind of seems like just, as we know, he just kind of spars for his training camp. That's all he does. So it kind of feels like he just spars, probably lets his coaches watch the film and just kind of tell him some tips and pointers, and that's that. Doesn't overthink it, doesn't overtrain it. And it looked like Adesanya, he needs to go back to the drawing board. It looks like Sean Strickland's camp at least knew they had a good game plan, and it wasn't like it was a revolutionary game plan. It wasn't like incredibly unique. It was just that for whatever reason, and I'm no expert, so some people may have a more in-depth analysis of this, but it seemed to me that Sean Strickland's unorthodox defense that I feel like gets him in trouble in previous fights ended up being the absolute perfect recipe to beat the champion. It's I don't even want to talk about another fight tonight from last night, because this one just deserves the entire episode. It's so bizarre. Now, is Sean Strickland going to go on a title run? I don't know. Previously, I would have said even if he won the belt, I just can't imagine. I can't fathom a world where Sean Strickland's holding onto the belt. He was only on a 2-fight win streak, and hadn't beat contenders in the top 5, to my knowledge, and maybe 1 or 2. No, not even 1 or 2. I mean, he lost to Jared Kennedy. I don't know who else he beat that was even in the top 5. He got in this spot not because of his ranking, but because of his he's a company man. Fights on short notice. He does whatever he's got to do, and they rewarded that. And the timing worked out. There was no opponent for Adesanya to fight because Duplessis was injured. Rob had lost, and Pieta went up to 205, so there's really nobody else to fight him. Sean Strickland got the title shot, and he made it worth his money, man. He made it worth his money, and I don't know, to hear Dana's thoughts on the immediate rematch, I'd be interested to hear your guys' perspective on it, because on one hand, again, dominant champion, I get it, but I don't care. If you're a dominant champion, that's one thing, but you at least have to put up a valiant fight. You have to at least make it competitive to be able to get the audience imagination going that we think it would be different if it happened again. I don't see anything that leads me to believe this would be different. I think Adesanya's got to go back to the drawing board. I think he got exposed. Still an incredible fighter. Still an incredible person. A great attitude. His head was high after the fight, and it was... it's funny because he went up to Sean Strickland and I was showing him his tattoo on his neck, and I guess that was one of his dogs that passed or something like that. And if anybody on this episode that's listening right now has ever lost a dog, that's like a big deal, and it's something that really affects you, and kind of you carry it. When you lose, it's like losing a family member. And Sean Strickland, in the post-fight presser, he didn't care one bit. He didn't realize that that's what Adesanya was talking about with the tattoo, but he said he came up to me talking about his dog. And then the reporter said, that was his dog that died, and he was showing you his tattoo. And Sean Strickland just kind of belittled him and said how ridiculous that is and how weird Adesanya is. And it's just, man, something like this makes you realize we are in a damn simulation, right? Anything can frickin' happen. Nothing makes sense in this world. Anything can happen. And Sean Strickland breaking the paradigm and becoming the middleweight champion. What comes next? Does Adesanya get the immediate rematch? I don't think he should. I think he needs to fight a contender and show us that he can do something other than the same old game plan he's doing every time. And, it worked great with Pieta. Didn't work so good with Sean Strickland, did it? Didn't work so good. And if plan A doesn't work, you got to at least have the flexibility. If you're a champion and you want to be a long-reigning champion, you want to be one of the greatest to ever do it, you can't be so fixed and set in your ways. You got to be able to be flexible and change the game plan at least a little bit, right? If you're losing in the 5th round, you got to be able to put some pressure on or change up the game, do something different. You can't just back away, run away from the fight and expect the counter shots to be your only path to victory. Never went for a takedown attempt, which I wasn't expecting, but I'm just saying his game is limited, man, and he got exposed. I think people watched a lot of film on him, and this is just a crazy one, man. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What a night. What a fight. It's a very good card. I thought it was going to be a weak card just based on the lineup, but overall, very impressive. Tai Tuivasa losing was interesting. I thought that was a very impressive performance by Volk. What a night, man. Crazy times. I love the sport. Hopefully you guys too, and that's why you're tuning in. If you guys appreciate this type of content, just go ahead and click subscribe on the channel below. I really appreciate that. I'm trying to grow this channel, so it means a lot. Something free and easy you can do. If you guys are listening on the podcast only stuff like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, just click follow, leave me a 5-star review. And lastly, if you'd like to be a part of the conversation daily, I got a very small Discord group called Mixed Martial Arts. You can click the link in the description to this video, and we just talk about things, talk about the fights, talk about UFO news, talk about geopolitical stuff and the potential lead up to World War III, ask questions, share our experiences. It's fun to be able to communicate with people all over the place who share the same interest and fascination in these subjects. So we got 3 little subgroups for each subject. Maybe you don't care about UFOs, but you like UFC or vice versa, whatever it is. We got 3 groups on Mixed Martial Arts you could be a part of. So go ahead and join that. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back with another episode. And Sean Strickland shatters the paradigm. He is the new middleweight champion. Where do we go from here? God only knows. Hope you all have a good Sunday. Take it easy.